I'm Dr. Ashley, and this is From Her Point of View. Welcome back. In this episode, the group discusses some topics I'm sure many of you will be able to relate to. Here is part 2 of From Her Point of View, One Question, One Truth. The conversation continues. We have a truth. Here's our truth. Marriage is an awesome thing if both parties are in it.
I would say true.
You would agree with that, truth?
That it would be a wonderful thing if both parties are fully invested in it. Yeah.
Okay, so what does that mean to you?
Well, my truth, I haven't had a successful marriage. I was married, but I think because I was young and I didn't really have my mental on what to expect or what, you know what I mean? Like we just had this discussion just a minute ago.
Yeah, we kind of did.
So,
have
but
it,
I would think both parties would have to be, well, then I'm wrong. Because I think both of us parties were in it initially. Then we discovered, or I discovered, this wasn't the one for me. Am I answering that right?
Yeah.
Because I think we were initially all in.
It's a statement.
So I have a question about
okay.
that too. Like, so you said initially you were both all in. Did
Right.
you have, when you married your husband, did you have any hesitation about?
I did.
Should I do this thing?
I think God told me I didn't want you
See,
to
I
marry
had that
him.
same hesitation
The
when I
first
married
marriage?
my
Your first
first husband. And I think standing there, I knew it was something that I should not do.
It was the standing there part, right?
Well,
I was getting ready to sign. Something said, "Don't you sign that paper."
But I think he knew too.
Really?
Because on a day that he would normally come home from work on time, he was late that day. I know my ex-father-in-law, said, you still got time. You don't have to do this. And I remember, just kind of thinking I was stuck.
That's how I felt.
And the way that I felt that I was stuck was that, I was a teenage mom. I had my first daughter. I was 16 in high school. And my ex-husband was in the military. And he was my best friend's brother. And he came home on leave, and that's how we met. And we started hanging out because I was always over to see her. But the truth be told, I was never attracted to him. And after a while, I just kind of looked at him. He was always like really loyal to me. He, whenever I was in a pinch,
my ex-husband was like that too.
and I needed him, he was always there for me.
Right.
But I was never attracted to him. And he was a good person. He was a good provider. And we kind of, in that relationship, we were back and forth for what I would say maybe about 7 years. Right. But it was comfortable for me too while he was in the military, because while he was away, I could still do my own thing.
Right.
But then he decided to retire. They offered an early retirement. They had so many enlistments that they basically just said, okay, we'll give you, I believe at the time the sum was like $30,000. So he got out of the military and he decided that, well, if we don't get closer in this time, then, what are we doing in this relationship? So sure enough, he got out of the military. He moved back to the hometown that we both lived in. And we started spending more and more time together. And he started to grow on me. And then I really did fall in love with him.
Right.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
What was different about before when he was not that guy to when he came back and he was?
I just think, distance, we were apart for so much of like our early dating relationship. We were never in the same place. We were never in the same state. He would just come home on leave. And so then that would just kind of be the honeymoon period. And then he would go back and everything else was, at this time it was all over the phone. It was calling cards, and he was even stationed in Korea for a whole year. And he absolutely did not want to go. But I think after all of that, and us having that closer, that tighter connection time, I got pregnant. And I'd already said to myself, I didn't want to be raising a second kid by myself. And I thought, he'd probably be a good stepfather to my daughter, because he always did stuff with her, took her to the park. If I was running late, couldn't pick her up from daycare, he picked her up. And, he was phenomenal to her. But where trouble started, but like I said, even standing there, we moved in together. Mm-hmm. My mother was like, you can't just be shacking up. That was her thing. Like, oh my God, you cannot be shacking up. So we bought a house together. So, part of, this money he got, he made a down payment. And his intent was always to marry me. But I think we have been living together 2 months. And my mom just almost died. When are y'all going to get married? When are you going to get married? When are you going to get married? And then I'm thinking, I've got this second little kid now. I'm stuck.
Right.
And I probably should just go ahead and do this thing. But it was something always in the back of my mind that was like,
he's not the one.
Maybe I shouldn't do this.
Right.
And I think he had the same thought. And so we didn't stay married if it was 3 years. Mm-hmm. And again, if I'm thinking, I remember feeling like such a failure. But it taught me a lot about compromise, right? Like, not to really compromise what you know to be your joy. And then in the end, I ended up being really hurt in that relationship. I did it like, okay, well, we've been together 10 years now, so I might as well go ahead and marry. He stuck with me through all this other stuff. As a single parent, he was there, and I was in a bind. He would send me money or this or that. And I just thought, this is what he really wants to do, so I should do it. And it just felt like obligation.
That's where I was at with mine, because I felt like just because somebody necessarily is pursuing you doesn't necessarily mean it's for you.
That's right.
Just because they're after you doesn't mean, us as women, I don't know what that is, but I don't know if it's women or just me, but yeah, it was like he was at my doorstep. He would always help me. He was always there for me. Even to this day, he's still, if I call him, he'll give your last. If he has $10, he'll give all of it.
Yeah, it was about more about the conquest as opposed to...
Is that what that is? I don't know, but
yeah.
I noticed when I started losing myself and I became miserable within myself and who I am and who I knew myself to be, that's when the difficulty started.
And I think, if you look at the total thing, nothing was a good fit. Nothing was a good fit.
He didn't want to do things I like to do. Like, I like to be active and play sports.
I wasn't
he didn't do
even
that.
attracted to him sexually in the bedroom.
Oh wow, that's serious.
To me there was nothing like it was like watching paint dry.
Really?
Yeah. It was like what? Yeah, no.
That's awful, right?
Like, you're watching paint dry. It's like.
I mean, this was a man. This was a man who wore socks and jogging pants to bed. Wow. So when you talk about like how is this? Going to get me excited about anything.
Right.
Like literally, you're here with socks on.
So let's revisit the statement. The statement was marriage is an awesome thing if both parties are in it.
Yeah.
I feel like you both were in it, but
for different reasons.
Maybe you didn't have the same definition of what marriage was supposed to be.
No,
I both were committed to each other in a sense.
I think we thought it was the right thing to do.
No.
With having a child together,
Mm-hmm.
because once that child came, everything in the relationship changed. It was, and another thing, what I would say is you can't have in that marriage, you can't have other parties in the marriage. Like my in-laws were, we lived across the street from my in-laws.
Oh no.
You see what I mean?
God, that's a lot.
That's a whole nother.
We done went from paint dry to living across the street to the in-laws. That was a lot.
That was a lot. And any time that you're like, you're neglecting your own household because you like your mom has a husband in the house, and you come home and tell me I'm gonna buy my mom a refrigerator, and I'm like,
what about your household?
There's a man over there that's going in and out of that refrigerator every single day, and he won't get the refrigerator. But meanwhile, you over here and we're struggling. But you're gonna create more debt for us. So that, for me, that was
the trigger.
That was an issue. But really, for me, where the rubber met the road was he started to treat my daughter differently than he treated our son. And he allowed his mom to do that. And I remember one day, this is how, it was like the spiraling effect. She brought an Easter basket, and speaking about like controlling the narrative and behaviors that go in your house, I just thought he could have either gone and purchased another Easter basket, or he could have taken the one basket, which was like a $50 basket. It was huge. Hey, this is from your grandmother. It's for both of you. You guys share it. But what he did was bring that basket to the house and give it to my son in front of my daughter. And I remember being so angry that I slapped him. And he fell over the bed. That's how hard I hit him. He fell like over the bed. That's how hard. So I was like, with my daughter, it went from the two of them going places together. But then now we have a child together, and he's allowed, his thoughts to, like there's favoritism here. And that was very hurtful. For me and for her. So, going
That's
back
kind
to
of shocking with a daughter. You would think that daughters, though, are their daddies.
Yeah,
I mean, I never experienced that.
But then
I've
allowing
seen
your
it.
mom to do that too, right? So you should have checked your mom to say, like,
Was she
why
thinking?
would you
Was
do
he
that?
thinking maybe that it wasn't his child?
But he wasn't
He knew
his.
He
He wasn't her
Yeah.
father.
Right.
The
So
son was
I already had,
I
this
was
child.
okay, yeah.
No,
All right.
no. But
I see
he
what you're saying.
just got to a place where, although he courted me, it was, I want to get to know your daughter. I want to be her best friend. They hung out together. He would pick her up from daycare. He would send her stuff even when he was in Korea,
And then all
on
of a
deployment.
sudden-
And then all of a sudden, when we have a child together, there's different treatment. And, I was very vocal about that. And that started us to really, have issues. And then, having your mom perpetuate this behavior was definitely disruptive.
Right.
But, after, in between that time, I mean, it was a long time. I kissed a lot of frogs in between, hardly any princes until, I met my current husband.
Right.
And the one thing that I would say, as far as both people being in it, it's not really about both people being in it. It's more about, do both people have the ability to compromise? That is the foundation for a successful marriage, because if only one is doing all the compromise, then that other person is always feeling without, or I'm making all the sacrifices, and then that's where resentment starts, and then that creates a spiral
Yeah, well,
effect.
what really triggered me is when I gained so much weight, and I was like up to like 280 freaking pounds, and I just was not working out. It was not being athletic. I used to play organized sports, and it was like the whole time we were even dating, I kept saying, come on, let's go do this. And he would be like, no, tomorrow or next weekend or blah, blah, blah. That was my red flag. But because I think I was so thinking I was in love, I think because the relationships that I had before were so volatile and abusive and what is it called, dysfunctional, that when I got my husband, he was like Prince Charming, like holding the doors, give you my last, we're gonna make it work, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and I got so caught up that I didn't realize, like, hold up, wait a minute, I need my own personal space for a minute to figure me out.
Well, you lose
I
yourself
went from one
when you're
extreme to the other
compromising.
extreme, and I had no medium. And then at that point, it was like, then I started getting fatter, and I was just cooking and cleaning and blah. As long as he had
You
all
weren't
the
happy
elements
in a
that he
relationship,
needed,
so that was your padding.
right? And as long as he had everything he needed, he was happy. As long as he had a hot meal, clean clothes, I'm in the house, he happy, Skippy go lucky, and me, and I'm like, oh my God, like what have I done with myself?
But this is what I want to say, like when you're in a relationship like that and you start to medicate with other things, it does manifest in you looking for comfort in something else. And I think, what you said is very similar to my own story, where because these things were happening and I wasn't, feeling pleased in, my relationship with my husband, I was always like, I used to be a size 3 or 4. And then at the time we married, I was probably like an 8'10". But quickly,
Right.
I started to take interest in other things. I mean,
Right.
there was one point we weren't even sleeping in the same
Right.
room together.
Right. Him and I
Even
we
the
slept.
same bed
Right.
together.
He slept in the basement. I
And
was in the upstairs. Mutual.
The baby was young, and so a lot of
Crazy.
times he would get up, and so I would be sleeping on the couch with the baby on my chest, and he'd be sleeping in the bedroom. And once you get in that place, you know, you medicate with other things, and what happens is you build up like a brick. Be-
A wall.
It's padding. What it is, it's a padding of protection for you.
Mm-hmm.
But each one of those bricks, they have a name. So it might start out as self-confidence,
Right.
one brick. Because now, I mean, like, what's wrong with me? You're not even, I mean, if you're not getting it from me, you got to be getting it from somewhere else. You're not even expressing any interest. I could walk through this house and have on virtually nothing.
And you're not
And
even.
And you're
even
not
look.
showing
You
interest.
didn't turn your
So,
head.
okay, then you go, what the hell's wrong with me? That's one brick. Then that turns into depression. That's another brick. So then you say, well, let me start finding comfort in something else I enjoy. Well, I didn't really like eating, but, you know, that's where I started to find my comfort. You know, so now this is a new brick. Now it could be, you know, now you've packed yourself away behind this wall. And in order for you to escape it and really be open to new love, you have to start putting a name on each one of those bricks and recognizing what they are and dealing with those things brick by brick.
Right.
Otherwise, you come to the next person,
with the whole wall.
with a whole wall, and you're broken.
And they can't break through it.
And
And
that's so
And
true.
they can't figure out why
What?
it is that it's so hard to get to the core of who you are, because you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
In
know what
order
the
to
bricks
find,
are.
in order to find what is
And-
that.
It's almost
and
like that
that
baggage.
That is so. That
and
is
it's
so perfect.
painful for you to do the work. That's
True.
the other thing. And
True.
I don't
And
mean
they
to sound like
see it.
Iyanla here, but you
They-
know, it's so painful for you to go back to that place. Because like one of the bricks that I carried with me for the longest was how this man told me he wanted a divorce. That was a brick. Like I can hear it, just like it was 20 minutes ago. I can still hear exactly what he said after, you know, saying, let's go to dinner. I don't really want to get a divorce. I want to work on our relationship.
And then
Then
you
all
tell
of a
me you
sudden,
want a divorce.
I'm at work in the heat, working on a college campus as security police, and they page me to take a call, and he basically says, not that I want to be married, I just don't want to be married to you.
Yep.
I'm on my job. My kid is less than a year old. I'm getting ready to graduate college, and I let you convince me into filing bankruptcy. I can't even get an apartment in my name. I gotta move back home with my parents.
And that.
So talk about bricks. Oh my God, I
Right.
had
All the
it's
bricks.
You
tonnage
had it all
everywhere.
I believe
And,
that.
and that goes back to our original conversation of what would you tell your younger self
The
now
first question we asked when we
to
started
do
recording.
to not be in this position that you're in now? Girl, run. He ain't it. This is not what you need to be
Right.
in. Like, had you known better then,
Right.
would you have allowed yourself to be in a
I wouldn't have
situation now?
compromised. I wouldn't have sacrificed
Compromise.
myself
Sacrifice.
thinking about. My whole thing was loyalty. This guy
Oh
stuck
my
with
God.
me for this
Fuck
amount of time.
That's me too.
You know,
Right.
Ain't it?
but that's your younger self. You know, not knowing what you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what I didn't know.
So if you could
And
go
at the
back
end
and
of the
tell
day,
your-
he wasn't loyal to me.
Yeah, so if you can go back and tell your when did you meet him? 16, 17, 18, 19
No,
years
I
old?
was probably about 19, 20.
So 19-year-old yourself, hey, you gonna meet this guy, he gonna be who he gonna be. But girl, he ain't it.
Yeah.
Do not go down that road. You wanna tell her that because you know, like, what is it? What is it? The future? Going back to future, coming back to future. What is the movie?
Back to the
Back to the
future.
Yeah.
You go here and then you come back and say, girl, he ain't the one. You want to bypass that because it ain't it. What do you tell that person? He's not it, and these are the reasons why.
Correct. My red flag
Yeah.
would have been every time I came home and he was on my porch,
Girl.
my stoop. That would
Fool,
that would
what
be
you
like
doing?
red flag, red flag, red flag. Now it's red
You didn't
flag,
left
red flag.
flowers. You didn't left candles, and you was an asshole this whole time. But you continued to come back on my porch.
You had that
With,
too?
yes, with flowers, with candles. And my mom be like, somebody rang the doorbell, go check it. And I go outside, and there's literally my entire porch. We covered with candles, covered with flowers. And I'm like, how and when the hell did you do this? Like,
Yeah.
but it made me think like you were crazy. Because when I
It
said,
did,
you know what?
seeing me, my dumb
Let's
self
talk
would be
about
like,
it.
oh.
Let's,
But did you
let's-
think it was crazy in the moment,
No.
or you thought it was crazy
I was like,
after
oh my
you
God,
thought
he
about
really
it?
cares. He
Exactly.
really cares.
Right.
And in reality, you was playing the game. You was playing
Right.
the game. I didn't know the game. You was playing
Right.
the game, and it wasn't right.
Right.
But ultimately, I was like, you know what? He's playing the game. I'm leaving. I'm
Now-
not doing this no more. But it took time and
Something's wrong
time
with
and
that,
time and
man.
time and time again for me to be like, oh, he's playing the game. Not doing. But you used to cover my entire porch, whole porch, with tea candles and flowers, and then be like, girl, don't leave. I love you. You're it. And then tomorrow, come Monday, you're a fucking asshole. What happened? What happened today night though? You was everything. You was Prince Charming Sunday night, but today you're an asshole.
Yeah.
Chip that finger.
Well, the carrots
That
turned back
finger's
into the
moving around.
pumpkins
Like,
at 12 midnight.
what I'm
Turn back at
saying.
12. At
So
12.
so you playing a game though, and I fell for it every single time.
Yeah, I
My
don't
mom
fall
was
for
like,
nothing.
girl, and my mom was so hip. She's like,
well, let me jump in there real quick.
doing that?
How do we not be? See, I don't want to ever be titled as being bitter
or
because I
weak,
thought about that.
or weak.
Because I said, oh, I don't want to be the bitter chick. You know how they say about the older ladies? Like, I don't want to be that. You know what I'm saying? You know how they tell how you get the older ladies out there and they're like, Dad, I'm trying to cease that now because I don't want to be that. And I'm right with you because I don't want to have those bricks because I've had that experience with the whole surreal situation I had.
No, we're not
No,
we're not saying his
no.
name.
The reason why,
We're not
okay,
saying his
so I had
He's
this
irrelevant.
experience.
Or he's
Okay, we're not gonna do
irrelevant.
names.
We're
I was
not
just saying it
his-
because
we're
you
not
know.
saying- we're not
But I
saying
think
his
if I
name.
would have had the moment of clarity in between the whole bricks, had that moment of clarity to find myself, and then would have had that experience, it would have probably been completely different.
Well, the way I
But when
think
I
that
met
you
her,
avoid
I was
that
psycho.
now
She
is
couldn't.
that.
She couldn't.
But
I
I
have
mean, like
already
you said, you
don't-
don't want to be that person, and
Because-
in order not to be that person now, you have to. First of all, we get into the space of like
On
condemning
guard.
ourselves. No, we condemn ourselves for
I'm
the
on
mistakes
guard
that we
with the
made.
antennas up all the time.
And then you get into this place, you're playing the blame game, you're blaming yourself. I shouldn't have did this, I shouldn't have did that. And so you start to be bitter because you're always replaying in your head what you feel that you shouldn't have done.
well, my
But
thing is this:
you
I
have
want
to first
be
give yourself like,
aware and on
forgiveness.
point
Give
and
yourself
watching itself
validation.
all the time.
yeah, you just got to start with
I'm
forgiveness
always like this,
first.
like,
Condemning yourself.
Yeah, you got to stop condemning yourself, and you have to just first practice forgiveness. You didn't know what you didn't know, so if you can forgive yourself first, then you can release all of that he or she or whomever did. You can say, you know what, I did the best with what I had at that
Right.
time, and I made the best decisions that I thought I could make.
Right.
And when you do that, you realize your happiness is somewhere else. Like in my
Right.
relationship now, I won't say that everything is beautiful, but what I will say is that there are two people who are willing to work hard at it and stick it out through those tough times.
Right.
And really talk about it and admit when, there's been a mistake made.
Right.
And recognize that it's
Right.
it's worth fighting for. Now,
That's not a common thing.
it's not, but I think when you start with a selection of someone who's willing to compromise, like somebody asked me, what was the difference between your first marriage and your second marriage? I married somebody who was willing to compromise like I was willing to compromise. And that was just real. That was a really basic thing, but that has been the number one success for our marriage. Like, I'm not always the person if you're the first person to say you're sorry all the time, it's a problem. And that was me in my first marriage. I'm always trying to smooth it over, get him to talk and get over things. But, now I find a different way also to hold my husband accountable. What were the boundaries that I set? Did I define them? And did I really let him know what the deal breakers were or how it impacted me? If I'm going to stay silent about it, then how do I really expect to address it? I mean, if you have courage to talk about it with other people, but not with that person,
Then something's wrong.
something is really wrong.
But okay, so pause. Something is really wrong. You acknowledge that you can talk about this, whatever it is, to other people, but you can't talk about it with your significant other. How do you go from talking about it with people who you know to him or her and figuring it out? Like, so the transition from me talking about it through people that I know and people that I don't know, as far as my significant other, how do you get there? Like, how do you?
What are
how do you?
afraid of?
What is
with
the
bringing
crossroad?
it up to your significant other?
Hurt,
That's the
misunderstanding.
We'll get all the way down to it. What are you? Because to me, what it seems like is the fear of ultimately losing the person.
But you're at the point where losing the person is not the issue. Because at the end of the day,
It sounds like it's more about the hurt that you don't want to see.
It's more about the hurt and the you being able to figure it out when the chips have fall. Where are you gonna go? What are you gonna do? Because
Well,
I'm leaving.
if you can't verbalize it, so you have to think.
Where's who gonna go?
He's gonna go. He's gonna
There's
go.
more
What's
ways
gonna
to
happen him
communicate. You
or
might
her?
not be able to
Because
say it, but you might need to write it. Here's
Yeah,
That's the
something.
best way to do it.
Here's
Writing,
something that
yeah.
I really
Yes,
need
you-
you
no,
to
no, no,
read
no,
and
no, no,
consider because you might not be
write
able to verbalize it.
Email it. You text it. You have a conversation.
Don't
You
text
write
it, but
you email
definitely
it.
write
You
it.
text it. You have a conversation, and you say, you know what? I wrote it. I emailed it. I texted it. I had the conversation 4 times with you. I'm done. And then they say, well, why are you leaving? Because I wrote it. I emailed it. I texted it. I had the conversation, and for whatever reason,
Nothing was fixed.
you have not done anything that I've asked you to do.
But you haven't held that person accountable.
This is true.
Because
So at
if
what
you've
point-
said it 4 times, and you read it, you wrote it, you communicated,
She
you
had to go 4
texted,
times.
then 4 times
you haven't had that.
you
feedback.
negated whatever you said was the consequence.
So after
You
the
negated
4th
it.
time, I'm done. Ultimately, in the beginning, I told you I'm going to write it, I'm going to read it, I'm going to text it, I'm going to do all these things. And if you do not fix it, this is it for
Well,
us.
then it
It's not
sounds
gonna
like
work.
the only thing
so I
left
did it
is
3
to
more times over, 3 more times
hold
over, 3
someone
more times over.
responsible.
And you've done nothing. So you know
Hold to
what?
what you
I've
said.
tried.
Right.
I've tried 4 different options, and you still have not grasped the concept of what I need from
So why
you.
have you tried 4 different options?
Because I love you.
Okay.
Because
That's
I
it.
believe-
That's
because-
it. I mean,
But love
that's
is not
it.
enough because I believe that you're.
But
in
are
it.
you willing
can
to
figure
work
it.
on
No,
it?
not at this point. I'm done.
But
5
you
times
just
over,
said,
I'm done.
but you just said that the reason that you've done it is
5
because
times
you
is because
love-
I thought you were going to get it.
No,
But
no,
at
no,
the
no,
5th
no,
time,
That's
I'm
not-
done.
that's-
I'm
no,
done.
no, no, that's not what you said.
That's not what you just said.
I heard what you
5
just said.
times you said it because I love you.
That's right.
And
Right.
I feel like you can figure it out.
Right.
Now,
And I believe
It's
that you're
5
going to
times
take
because I think you can
hold
fix
of
it.
it. Yes.
Right.
But you're not doing that. So what do I do after the fact? I
How,
given
you
a
have
chance
to hold
after
the.
chance
You gotta
after chance after
hold
chance.
them
How,
accountable
though?
along the way.
But how,
Not
though?
to the end. Not to the end.
But how? How do you say, you know what? We had this conversation 2 weeks ago. I'm holding you accountable. Now what?
So when did you
I'm like,
require
what?
progress?
Wait, what? I gave you 7 days. And that 7 days.
Well, at the end of 7 days,
But was that
when there was no
communicated
progress,
that-
what did
Clearly.
you do?
was it clearly defined? You
Yeah.
got 7 days.
you got 7 days.
To
Nothing
do
else.
And we
X.
need to figure out
7
this within
days
this time frame,
to
or
give me
else
clarity
this is the
on where you
consequence.
are.
Because
or
while
how
you
you
have
want to fix
foresight,
this.
sometimes other people need things to be clearly defined.
Right.
You have 7 days to ascertain what I was telling you, break it down, figure it out, and respond with what you're gonna do.
Okay.
Come back
7
to the
days.
solution.
Right.
Mhm.
That's it and that's all.
Right.
So when you break it down, be like, you got 6 months.
You got 6 months.
You got 6 months.
What you
I
gonna
done
do?
took and told you.
I'm getting a lawyer after
Okay.
6 months. You're
I'm
done.
getting a lawyer at 3 months, and we're gonna revisit this again. And when you break it down, give an accurate and specific timeline.
Well, there's got to be something tactical in there,
Right.
right? So if you
Touch points.
the
Here we go.
behavior that you want to change, there's got to be some intermediate steps, right? Because that person may not be able to visualize the entire staircase; they
Right.
can only see
Which
the first
is
step.
insane
And it's
to
not
me.
gonna happen. the
Well,
next day.
everybody doesn't. Everybody's not born with vision.
Right.
Everybody doesn't have vision.
And it's
Everybody
not gonna happen the
doesn't.
next day.
What are
Yeah.
you doing?
7 days is a good.
It is not gonna happen the next day.
And you
period
have
of
to take
time.
into account that somebody may not be able to see this entire staircase.
Right.
So they might have to start with the bottom step.
Right.
And you might have to help define what your deal breaker is and where that starting point is for that bottom step.
So should you provide steak, wine, and whiskey? Because at the end of this dinner, whatever the situation is, I'm gonna lay some hard shit on your ass, and I'm be like, look here, motherfucker, I'm done.
You can't do that.
I told
No.
you.
You cannot do that.
You cannot.
You cannot do
But I want to leave you
'Cause I wanna
with
be like,
this
look
on
here.
that situation.
Look here, I'm done.
You
Listen to her.
look. I've learned from a failed marriage and a successful marriage. And one thing that I would say from that failed marriage, you have to leave a person with their dignity. That's number one.
Amen.
'Cause I'm ready
You
put
have
in the
to,
ground.
because at the end of the day, that is a human being.
True.
It's a person, just like you have disappointment, pain, and hurt. They've got disappointment, pain, and hurt.
But I feel like
And
it's
to
hard
know-
because you feel like you didn't give a care about me. Why should I care about?
But
what
who's
you
to
got
say?
going on?
Maybe
But
maybe
that's not
they're.
what they feel.
But that,
Yeah.
but that's how I feel.
But a lot of
If you
this
don't
is
care about me,
perception,
I
right?
care about you.
A lot of this is perception. You're looking
My
at it
perception
from
is
your
you ain't give two
lens.
shits about what I had going on, and I told you verbatim, I ain't right, you ain't right, this ain't right. So what you gonna do? And you were like, I don't give a fuck. And I was like, okay, cool, okay, right.
But perception, you're still looking at
Let
it
her
with
tell
your
you from
lens.
two perspectives. She said,
I'm just saying.
Let her-
Yes, but
Okay,
you're
I'm
looking at it
listening.
from your
being
lens.
teachable.
And you need to be able to consider multiple lenses on the situation, right? You can't just
the
see
whole
it.
point of this.
Yes. Like even so like your podcast, right? You have multiple voices. You don't have one voice
Yeah.
because there are benefits
Many.
of multiple
Yes.
perspectives.
Sure.
Because we glean a lot when we are able to hear how other people see the world.
Okay.
Being stuck in the way that you see the world is based on your own life experiences, but another person that comes from a different background, and I'm going to use myself as an example. I didn't grow up in Baltimore. I grew up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is about as rural and
Right.
southern as they come. I'm not going to have the same context and lens as you growing up in Pittsburgh.
Right.
You and I are just not going to have the same lens. So you're going to have to learn how to get multiple perspectives and then be open to multiple perspectives beside your own.
You're right. You're right. That is going to be a process.
Well, number one, you're a female and he's a man.
And I'm a strong female.
But you know what they
There's
say.
nothing wrong
from
with
I
that.
came
different
from my
planets.
mother who said, you know what? If the shit don't work, get the fuck out of Dodge. So, in that, because that's
Look.
what I've been taught.
But see,
If it
you
doesn't
gotta
work, you
reel
leave.
that
But
in.
how do you break the cycle?
Right, you gotta reel that
So
in.
how's mom doing in relationships right
Not
now?
so great.
Okay.
Not so great.
So do we wanna maybe have the same experience
No,
that
we
mom
do not.
has? All right. So we might want to step back and look at it with some more glasses.
Mm-hmm.
We need some more lenses to put on to see, like, that might not have worked for mom, but I'm not mom, and
And
I understand
Well,
what
to
mom
put
is
a positive
saying.
spin on
but-
this,
Same.
one thing that I was grateful for is I had a moment of reflection to say I would much rather be single in my own personal
Good for
space,
you.
not having to have that grief of where are you, when you coming home, having the responsibility of coming home. Maybe it's because I don't feel the need or the person that's valued at that level to be able to have to run home to. Does that make sense?
it does. Because when you said it, it took me back to, I didn't know how to verbalize it when I was married and
Right.
being so, unhappy. Like, you're both in the same house, but you are fucking lonely. You
Right.
are lonely.
I'm upstairs
And
and
then-
he down in the basement, and this is the mutual living space, and we never in it at the
That's
same
right.
time.
But you are in a
don't
marriage,
cook.
but you are lonely. And it wasn't until
That's worst.
I heard this Jill Scott song that really put it into perspective.
And I know
and
what
it
is, but
was-
go ahead.
I
Forget
think
the
I
name
know
of
which
it.
one
Go
you're
ahead.
talking about.
I'm lonely whenever you're around. Now
Okay.
that's some cold hard
Yeah.
stuff to say, but for me it was like, oh my gosh, she verbalized at that time. It was many years
Right.
ago, but she verbalized how I was feeling and also what I was considering, because the song starts out, I've been talking to this man, but that's as far as it's gone. But here's how, in entertaining that conversation, that I am starting to consider more than just talking with this man. Because I'm in the same house with my husband, but I'm still lonely. How can you be lonely with your husband in the same house, but I'm lonely whenever you're around? That's really deep.
That's a lot.
But I lived that.
I
And
have to.
it is an upsetting thing
And the hard
for
part
yourself
about
to experience.
let me ask
it.
you that though, with the husband at that time, were they experiencing the same thing or were they oblivious? Because I think mine was oblivious. They thought I just had issues
was
that I needed to
oblivious,
figure
too.
out. Right? Yeah, they were.
He was oblivious too.
He didn't get it.
But he was such a mama's boy. I think that was a distraction for him too.
Terrible,
So
terrible,
if
terrible.
I could go back and tell my
Live with your mama.
19-year-old self, that I would just say, hey, never date a mama's boy.
Right.
Bye.
But that's the extent of it.
What are we drinking?
Take her cup.
The group definitely got into some things in that segment. But wait, there's more. Check in next week for part 3 of From Her Point of View, One Question, One Truth.
You've been listening to From Her Point of View. From Her Point of View is a podcast covering a wide range of topics. The content is specifically curated for women by women. To give feedback or for questions, please reach out to us at 443-507-8032. Also email fromherpointofview@gmail.com. Please visit the podcast website fromherpointofview.podbean.com. Also the Facebook page From Her Point of View. Tune in weekly to hear it from her point of view.